Matt, what I would love to do to start off is get an introduction from you. Who are you? And give us a short rundown about your business, and we'll get into more details in just a minute.
Yeah, well, hi, I'm Matt. I'm from Sydney Guided Tours, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I focus on nature and wildlife, and I promise my guests the best nature and wildlife experience that they can have in one day.
So tell us more about the kind of tours that you offer. Do you offer private tours? Do you have an itinerary that's already set, or do you customize for every guest? Walk us through that.
So what I do is I offer a private day tour, one tour only, and I've put a lot into it. I've got to be honest, although I'm a nature and wildlife guy, I've only been in tourism for maybe 3.5 years, just before COVID hit. And I saw what else was out there, and I decided I'm going to make the Grand Poobah private day tour that showcases everything in the bush and beaches and the coastline and waterfalls and all of that. So that's what I've done. I take up to, say, 5 guests in a big car. I'll just touch on the car. The car's interesting. In Australia, we have Klugers. It's a Kluger. In America, I think you call them Toyota Pathfinders. So this is a Kluger. It's big and it's black, and I put these giant, looks like the US president logo on the side, but it's not. It's a cockatoo holding a waratah flower. It looks like that red thing, and a wattle. They're 2 Australian flowers. So, and I put some flags on the front. It's just a great introduction, but then all the nonsense comes off, and then we go out to the bush. So that's what we do.
So how long are the tours that you do? Do they vary in length?
Yeah, look, it's just, at the moment, it's one tour, and I'm focusing on one tour because I've just nailed it, and guests love it. It's a full day. I pick them up at 8 in the morning from their hotel in the city. Usually my guests, quite often they're from America, and it's their second day in Australia. I don't know why they just come here for 7 days, but they come here. And they've read my blurb, the only nature and wildlife tour that you need to do when you get here in Australia. So it's the second day. The first day they're just recovering. The second day they come and I meet them, and they're all excited and happy, and it's great. And I say, guys, you're in for a big day. And we finish at the moment about 6:30 at night. So it's 10.5 hours. It's a big full day. And at the end of it, they're shattered because we've done everything. So, it's a big day, big day.
Is it the kind of thing that you would recommend someone do kind of early in their trip so that they can start to see the highlights or places that they may want to kind of delve into a little bit more?
Yeah, you know what? When I devised this tour, I wanted to do something different. Like I mentioned before, I'm new to the industry, relatively, 3.5 years. And I saw what else was out there. And the visitors to Australia, they see the Sydney Opera House, and then they go up to the Blue Mountains, and they sit on a bus, and there's lots of other buses, and it's a 2-hour drive up there, and everyone does it. And I thought, we can do so much better than that, And I was told by private tour guys, they said, because I was picking their brain, they said, we need some fresh ideas. And I thought, well, I know exactly what this place needs. So I devised this tour that goes to a different region, which is the Central Coast. It's about an hour and 10 minutes north of Sydney. But in a day, as I mentioned before, we see so much. And I suggest that, it's pretty easy to walk around and see the Sydney Opera House and Harbour Bridge when you're in the city by yourself, and you can possibly do a city tour. Often people go to the Blue Mountains and it's covered in fog. So what's the point? But my tour you don't, because we go along the coast. So I suggest that have a look at the city sites, but if you want to see real nature and wildlife, don't go to the Blue Mountains. Come on my tour and see the Central Coast, because honestly we see enormous panoramic views across valleys, and we go along the coast and we look at smashing waves going into the coastline, and it's you can in summer we can go body surfing. We sit under waterfalls. You know, other tours, they look at the waterfalls from a distance, but us, we sit under a waterfall with a complimentary glass of a bottle of wine. So that's kind of roughly what we do in a day.
Sounds like with a small group, you're able to navigate into places that are very different than just mass tourism locations. So it seems really unique.
Yeah, it is. And also, because it's a small group, I get to accommodate different levels of mobility and all ages. Like I can do a family, or I can do 80-year-old people, you know, that have issues walking, or young people, like, you know, some... a few weeks ago, I did some people from Minnesota, I think, and they were triathletes and they wanted something more extreme. So we went off the beaten track, walked down into the bush and looked at, I go exploring in the bush quite often and looking for indigenous carvings and artwork and charcoal drawings. So I knew these guys were fairly agile. So we went right down into the valley and off the beaten track, and looked at charcoal drawings that are hidden underneath a waterfall. And other people, like elderly people, you know, we go and we go along little boardwalks through a rainforest or along the coastline. So it's catered to different people. But not only that, is having a small, like I'm just one vehicle. You're right, we can go to little isolated valleys. We go to lookouts where there's no one else there. We go to beaches where only locals go. I go to, and this is another reason I do this tour, and I'm very hesitant to sell out and even get more operators. I look at Aboriginal artwork, and ideally I don't want them exposed to masses of people. I'm happy to take small groups. The national parks know about these, so it's best. I think it's better if I go in with small groups and not big buses or groups of, you know, 10 or 20. So just small little family groups. I say, look at this. Look, the locals don't know about this place. It's in their backyard. You know, and there's giant carvings of Aboriginal men and women that are there for thousands of years. Who knows? Because they've regrooved the charcoal, the drawings, so no one knows the age of it. But we can do that. We can go off the beaten track and I can spend quality time, you know, one-on-one talking about the plants and the animals and lots of different aspects of the bush. I can't really do that with a big group, and I'm very hesitant to do that.
It's such an interesting kind of thing to think about, because when we want to explore people traveling and getting the most out of their trips, that's always been one of the big problems with doing a large group tour, is that there's very much a one-size-fits-all mentality, and that doesn't really give travelers the opportunity to get the experience that they want to have or that they're able to have. So I think what you're offering is a really interesting approach, so that, you know, people can get into the kind of things that they want to see. They can adapt to their ability, what they're able to do, and also what they're going to be interested, you know, in having those experiences.
Yeah, I did do one tour as a test, and I took 5 people from all different groups, brought them together, and I thought it was a disaster. Well, it wasn't a disaster, but, you know, one person was on the phone having an argument, another person wanted to see something else, and it's like, it just gets awkward, because I like to tailor-make my tour for an individual family or a group or a couple. Some people are into, they want to have oysters for breakfast and look at pearl shells, and other people, they don't want to eat oysters for breakfast. They can't think of anything more gross than doing that. And other people want to go into the bush and, you know, sit and hug a kangaroo, and we can do that. You can pat kangaroos and hug emus. I cater to individual groups and age groups. There's a word for it. It's intergenerational, what I do.
Right. So do you have a lot of families that come on tours?
Yes. And they're a lot of fun. And I've got a nice sound system in it, and I get them to play whatever they want, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like on such a full day, it would be so great to be around your group of people or your family, where you're going to have that really good atmosphere since you're on tour for, like you said, a very full day.
Yeah, I'm going to say something, and I feel a bit awkward doing this, but often my guests, they say, when they do my tour, they say it's like, I'm going to say it, they say it's like discovering a long-lost relative, just hanging out with me all day, and they didn't know they had an Australian cousin over here. But it's just so much fun. And at the end of the day, I sit in the car and just go, there goes my it's like saying goodbye to family. It's such a great day, and that's why I just love doing this. I get a bit choked up. Honestly, sometimes I get choked up at the end of the day because it's such an intimate, fun group. Even with a couple, we have a hug at the end of the day and say, geez, that was fun. And, thanks for teaching me how to body surf, or sitting under the waterfall was fantastic, or.
It's got to be interesting for you too, because doing these smaller groups, every tour that you do probably is quite unique and different from the one before.
I've had 5 lawyers, a family of lawyers. I've had, triathletes. I've had, and different cultures have different expectations. I've had Chinese tourists. I've had Koreans, tourists, and American. They're also different. They all have different expectations. Some want like a shopping tour, and I can do that. We can go to wineries and a distillery, and that's okay. But my thing is nature and wildlife. So, I cater for everything, but I think my tour is more suited that they're happy to get out of the car and do a short, 20-minute walk through the bush or along the coast. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay as well, because, we can drive around and look at great sites and visit wineries and.
So how did you get into starting this company and getting into tourism?
I'll keep this story short. So I grew up with a bush in my backyard, and I grew up exploring caves and looking for drawings and animals and stuff. So I've always been close to the bush. When I finished school, I hitchhiked right around Australia for 14 months. And I learned a lot about Australia. And I, like most people in the travel industry, I love traveling. But traveling around Australia, I really it was a very humbling experience to be on the receiving end of generosity from other people. Because every day or every lift, you don't know where you're going, but whoever picks you up is a great person, because otherwise you'd be stuck on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere for days. So that I kind of came out of my shell when I was 18. I started hitchhiking, and I loved it. Then I had to grow up and get a job. So I worked in video production, being a producer and doing documentaries and stuff like that. I kind of got burnt out by video production after 30 years sitting behind a computer, editing graphics and all that kind of stuff. And I saw a career consultant. He said, well, what do you really want to do? And I thought, well, what I'm doing. I'm also a scout leader. I've been a scout leader for 12 years, and I'm always going down the bush exploring. And I also find Indigenous artwork and have them registered. And I said, well, something to do with nature. And he said, well, yeah, good luck with that, because I've got a background in video production. He was clueless. And I asked my wife, and what should I do? And she said, she's from Malaysia, and I always have Malaysian relatives staying with me, and I have to show them around. And she said, why don't you become a tour guide? So I did. And what I show my family is what I show my guests. So no one else does this tour. I just pulled it out of nowhere. And it's what, honestly, my tour is what I do on my day off. If I've got time off, I go to the beach, I go surfing, I go exploring down the bush, I sit under a waterfall. So that's how I came up with the tour. And it's very different to what else is out there.
That's really cool. When I was in Berlin, and I was there for about 10 years, working with a tour company. And then prior to that, many years earlier, I was a student there. And so that was one of the ways that we designed our tours was, what do we do when our family or friends are in town? What is it that we show them? Let's let that influence the design of our tours, because there's a mixture to strike of hitting the check mark items and the must-see things that everyone reads about, but then also making it more personal so that people feel like they actually went to a city and got beneath the surface, more than just having always some filter between you and everything else that you were seeing.
Yeah, exactly. I think what I show is I try and be. I don't try. I'm authentic. I'm you know, and my guests, they go and speak to oyster farmers and, you know, hear their story, or we go and speak to fishermen, or we go and chat to surfers. So, you know, it's all about authenticity. But the other thing that we do is just before I leave Sydney, we drive around and we go to Mrs. Macquarie's Chair. It's one of it's on a headland. It's a lookout overlooking Sydney Harbour, and guests get to see the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which we drive over, and the Opera House. So they tick off the big things anyway within half an hour. But then we're going into the bush, mate. That's it. We're out of here. You know, let's get away from the traffic. So yeah, I throw in a bit of everything. But yeah, you're right. I think it's all about authenticity.
There was a great statement that I read on one of your posts on your website that it was the hitchhiker's karmic circle of kind of bring it together. So I really love that statement because it makes sense so much for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that means a lot to me, because that's so. What I said about the hitchhiking, I do feel like I'm giving back. And you know, I got my driver's license when I was 35 years old. It's a long time. You know, I was hitchhiking, riding a bike, and now it's like I owe all these people a lift. So when you hop in my car, I'm going to look after you, mate. You know, so they're so true. I'm glad you picked that up.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, I enjoyed reading through your website and reading more about the background, and it's so great when there is a personal story. I really appreciate the personal approach, because so much of what I'm trying to do with Painted Circle is reminding people that travel is very personal. You know, that we're always confronted with these really big companies and big chains, and there are some really good ones out there, but for the most part, we've lost that personal connection in so many ways. But the reality is many tour companies are run by people who are very passionate about what they do, people who are based locally, people who have histories in places, and they want to share it. And it's all about sharing their home and the culture. And so I really enjoy reading through your website and knowing a little bit more about you, because your company and you seem to be so intertwined. I mean,
it's just me for the moment. And look, my outlook on things is a little bit different to a lot of the, sorry about the squeaky chair, it's a little bit different to the tour guides that are out there. A lot of them are into, this is getting very niche, a lot of tours in the city, they focus on colonial history. You know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but the colonial history it's pretty barbaric. You know, the English came here and you know, prisons and all that kind of stuff, and the way they treated the indigenous people. I don't like touching on that stuff. I like showing nature and wildlife and talking about this is where the original people live, and this is what they've taught us. So that's my take on it as well. It's a different approach to other tour guides, and I respect what they do. I couldn't do it. I like showing nature and wildlife and what was here, you know, for tens of thousands of years.
Is there anything else that you would want to share about the kind of experience that someone's going to have when they come on tour? Like, what does the process look like? Do they contact you and you organize a trip, or are you going to propose an itinerary? What's that process look like?
Okay, so if they find my website, Sydney Guided Tours, you can write to me. If you have any questions, write to me. But what I prefer is like what we're doing now, just having a quick chat. If you want, if you've got, you know, 5 or 10 minutes, if you have any questions, happy to chat. And then, you know, you pay online. It's all bookable on the website. And then I can answer questions like if you're coming to Australia for your first time and you want to know where to stay in Sydney and what to do. And look, on my website, I've got, you know, I've got lots of posts and videos on what you can do in Sydney. And then, on the day, I'll go and pick you up at your hotel and look after you for the whole day. We go and have a nice lunch at either one of two places, by the water, overlooking a Pelican Island or looking at a beautiful bay. We explore beautiful beaches. It's a big full day, and at the end of it, only recently I started squeezing in, looking at a panoramic view of Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House and the Sydney Harbour from another viewpoint. No one else does this stuff. No one else knows about it. So it's a great big day. But any questions, we can video chat or via email. It's all accessible on the website.
That's terrific, Matt. Thank you so much for giving us this quick rundown. Your link's on the website, so I would encourage anyone to get in contact. And it's great that you want to have like a more one-on-one conversation with people if they have any questions. So that's terrific. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate it so much that you're taking part with Painted Circle, a new platform. But there's a lot of people looking for really genuine experiences, places that are locally owned. And so I really am very glad that you're here on the platform. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Charles. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And all the best to you, mate. And I love your work too.